Hello. Hoping somebody can tell me that you hear me, that you're there. Stephanie, I think you might be the only one on right now. And I thought I would be able to see people. Only see me. Are you hidden? You might only be on the phone. Give people just another more minute to see if they dial in. Go ahead and get started because I hate videos that begin on the replay with a lot of dead air. So I only see, hi Stephanie, you should be hearing anything. Yes, you should. Can you not hear me? My mic's operating. I see it flashing at me. Can't say that I have any advice because I can see my little microphone indicator going up and down, so I know it's sending out sound. Maybe your volume or speakers, or I see a couple more people dialed in. Can you all hear? Anybody? Oh, yay! All right. So can you also see my screen? It has a little droplet of oil and it says animal first aid. Can you see that? Yes, no, maybe. Okay, she can see me. All right, cool. Okay, so I'm Dana Brigman. I am now also a representative for Young Living Essential Oils, in addition to my dog training business and pet photography. And I am currently wrapping up a really fascinating aromatherapy class on veterinary aromatherapy for animals. I'm going to be taking one in the fall for the people side of things too. But my first passion is, and probably will forever be, all about the animals, especially my dogs. And so I am starting to move into what I'll call wellness practice work, helping people get wellness plans together for their dog and solving supportive care issues with that. And so one of the things that I have found really fascinating in this aromatherapy class is things that we can do for first aid. And I wanted to share some of that with you guys tonight. It's important to know that the things that we'll be talking about are not instead of your veterinarian. You still need to include them, rush to the vet for emergencies, but these are things that you can do to help support your pet on your way to visit the vet, or while you're waiting on the phone to ring, or whatever those pieces are to get you into their care. I'm not a veterinarian, but I have been in this field now for several years and starting to get much deeper into the education side of it. So the things that we'll be talking about, really they're general education information. Right. It is up to you to decide what is best for your pet, yourself, your family. and to know that the things that we are talking about are not evaluated by the FDA. They are not things that we can talk about diagnosis, treatment, curing, or really preventing disease. Even as we go through tonight, I will be talking in a way that tries to keep this presentation compliant under the terms of the FDA, which means I can't say you're going to use this oil for this disease, or if your dog is in pain, you're going to do this. That's not what we can do. You'll start to notice when you look at commercials now on TV, how many of those supplements and products are also now being required to make that same statement. What I will be telling you is what systems of the body we can support and things that you can use when those systems are compromised. If you want more detailed information, I make that available to anybody that is part of my team, whether it's up or down. So for example, when you sign up, there's somebody who signs you up. And if you are on my team or my teammates' team, then I'm certainly happy to help provide information and support to those folks, because the animal side of it is definitely my niche, and it's not something that everybody is expert in. We got a lot of people that know about the human side, babies, new moms, men, all that kind of stuff, but there's not a lot doing the animal side yet. I think that's coming. I think it's growing. So as we go through, I'm going to give you some information about oils that I think make sense for you to have on hand. We'll talk about some of the ones that are included in the starter kit, which is a great way to get going. It's how I got going, not realizing when I started just how effective some of those oils would be for my dogs or for other pets. So we'll make some little differentiations tonight as we talk about cats. But generally what you're going to find tonight is that the oils that are discussed are really coming out of that aromatherapy class that I'm working on, and they are okay for cats unless otherwise specified. So tonight we're not going to be talking about CPR, Heimlich maneuver, the Heimlich. We're not going to be talking about wrapping wounds or splints or securing breaks or any of that kind of stuff. We're going to be talking about oils with injuries, wound care, respiratory care, that kind of thing, as we think about stabilizing our dog on the way to the vet's office. And what we'll talk about tonight, I want you to understand, will be very different than what would be discussed if we are talking about supporting long-term care. So, for example, if you have a dog with an urgent respiratory issue, we're going to be talking tonight about what to do with that. If it's something that's been persistent, a long-term, sort of a chronic thing, then the process and the protocols would be different than trying to treat something with urgency. So just be aware that tonight is talking about sort of that emergency first aid. This area of getting started is something that I don't think is well known. It was not known to me when I first began, and this is about imprinting the oils that we will be using for our animal care. And what this really says is we want the first exposure to a scent to our animal to be at a time when there is no stress, when there is no injury, where there is no trauma, so that they are not making an association of scent with trauma or scent with injury. So for example, if you have, we all talk about lavender as being soothing and calm. For some dogs, it could be an inverse effect if their first pairing with that oil is during an emergency situation. So this imprinting is really about taking an oil that you're bringing into your home, adding to your collection, adding specifically to your first aid kit, and introducing it to that dog during a time where they are resting, perhaps snuggled on the bed, getting petted by you, where it is associated with something comforting and pleasant and enjoyable. Having said that, if you find yourself in an emergency and have not done the imprint, don't worry about it. Just do the care. Just know that in the future, your pet may have a negative reaction the next time that oil is presented to them, if they have in fact paired scent with trauma or injury or something along those lines. Okay, so again, get an oil that's going to be added to your collection. Shake it, right? Shake it just a little bit. I'm not sure you guys can still see me or not if the presentation's there. But you're basically going to present the cap to them, let them sniff it, let them smell it. If they run away, let them. Try again later by maybe putting a couple of drops on your hand, rubbing your hands together. They talk about rubbing your hands clockwise 3 times to activate the synergy of oils. But rub your hands together and then go and pet your dog, or let your body be the diffuser so that the dog starts to experience that oil in a pleasant situation. Okay. These oils, there are 4, were suggested in the class that I'm taking as if you can have no other oils, if this was all you were ever able to have access to, these are the 4 primary ones that you would want to have for your pets. If you have a cat, there's an additional probably, and instead of all of those, you would want to add the Melissa. So the veterinarian that I'm working with, she describes it as the HELP oils, HELP, and the 4 of them would be representative of helichrysum, eucalyptus, lavender, and peppermint. And we're going to talk in a little more detail about what each of those oils do. And then we're going to add some additional ones to the mix. But just be aware, if you're thinking about how do you start building your collection, in my opinion, the starter kit is the place to start, and then add in helichrysum and eucalyptus, and then some of the other blends that we'll be talking about tonight as well. Melissa, she says that Melissa is her go-to cat oil. I do not have a cat, haven't been, in fact, I'm allergic to cats. So if we start doing any sort of kitty raindrop technique or consulting with cats, I'm going to have to work on some things that will prevent those symptoms. But Melissa is probably one of the more expensive oils, but you can dilute it significantly for the cats, and it begins to be an oil that is one that will address many issues. So you won't need a lot of other ones if you have access to that. Okay. If you guys start having questions, feel free to pop them into the group chat, and I'll try to keep my eyeballs there and answer questions as we go. So helichrysum, I should have pulled them out. I have it here, but I didn't pull them off the shelf. Anyway, helichrysum is one that will aid in the stopping of bleeding. So if your pet has been injured and has a bleeding wound, helichrysum is the oil you want to begin applying to that. It is actually also beneficial to internal bleeding. So if your dog, for example, has an assumption of internal bleeding, and basically if they've ever been, we hope this never happens, but if they have been severely injured, say hit by a car, for example, we must assume that there is internal bleeding. And at that point, instead of just putting it on the wound that is exposed, you would add it orally to their mouth, and perhaps a lot of it to help address what's going on internally. Again, as you're zipping down the road to see your veterinarian, but these are things that may help you buy some time, buy some comfort, and get your dog as stabilized as possible on the way to the vet. It is beneficial to bruising. It aids in detoxification of injuries. It helps tissues regenerate themselves. It can improve nerve and circulation function. And according to Chinese medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, that's what the TCM stands for, it can begin to move blood stagnation. So it can get things moving in the system where perhaps they have begun or have shut down in some way. So helichrysum, definitely one to have for serious emergencies as well. Okay. Eucalyptus is one that will help with the respiration system. So that dog that may have some coughing going on, may have some shallow breathing, may have some difficulty taking in sort of those full inhalations of air, this may help open them up. It also is beneficial when joints or muscles are compromised, and it can just help evoke this feeling of, a desire to heal, for the body to want to heal and to get better. So a lot of this stuff, and this is where I just find it so fascinating, and we'll talk, next week we're going to talk about emotions with essential oils. But one of the things that fascinates me so much is how this, how the oils affect how we feel about it, how the animal feels about it, and how it can just really start to address the energy. And I've been saying for a long time in my dog training business that it's less about sit, stay down, stay, come when called than it is about leadership and structure and the energy we present to our dog. So when we have confidence, when we have hope, when we have belief that things can be better or will be better, or we're pushing for that, that stuff affects how the dog is responding. They mirror us, and it can really help with the moving forward in the healing process of some of these issues. Lavender, go-to for everything, right? If you've got nothing else, or if you've tried other things and feel like they're not getting it, add lavender, use lavender. One of the key things to make sure you note here, and if you're going to, I hope many of you are following along on other things. Join the Facebook group, join the Facebook page, join the team and get into real detail. But you'll start to learn more about the names of some of these oils, because there are different species. When we talk about lavender, the name you see here, Lavandula augustifolia officinalis, is the only one that matters. Everything else is not as pure, as effective. Everything else just is off the table, right? And you may find that some of those other species, again, not as effective, or are perhaps adulterated significantly, or not grown to be pure, and what this veterinarian calls biologically active. So I don't know if you guys can even see me or not, but last night I burned my hand. I don't cook very often, but I've decided I've got to start eating better. So I was grilling up some vegetables, and I had an iron skillet in the oven, and I went to pull it out with this new little pot holder thing that I have that left this part of my hand exposed. And I felt it just blistering as I was holding it. So I set it down, came right over here to my desk and pulled out the lavender and put a couple of drops right on the spot. It has not hurt a single minute, not once, since last night. There's a little spot there. I can tell that it happened, but there's no pain, there's no nothing associated with that at this moment. So it's super helpful for burns. Think if your dog is somehow hits a hot stove, hot grill, hot asphalt, any of those things, this can be helpful. This can be very beneficial to get on them immediately. If you are using an oil that is not this species and perhaps has been adulterated, you could actually make the burn worse. So I'll give you an example. I went shopping when I first started this stuff a few years ago, because I was one of those people who thought there can't be a difference, right? That oils are oils and I should be able to go to the mega retailer here in town and buy their $5 oil and it be just as good, right? It's not. In fact, their bottle, when you start reading it, says skin irritant. So I know if I had put that on last night, I would have had a problem, because it says don't put it on your skin in the first place, which is the complete opposite of what lavender is intended to do. Lavender is one of the best skin supportive skin supportive oils that's available on the planet. So just be aware of those variances as you start really digging into this stuff. In addition to burns, it can assist with like muscle spasms. It's certainly intended to be calming, balancing, harmonizing. It talks about balancing the energy of relationships. So again, as we think about this in terms of first aid, you are going to benefit from the presence of lavender as much as your dog is, right? To keep you stable and calm so that you can focus and attend to the matter at hand versus getting into sort of this chaos of the brain going, oh my God, what do I do, right? So it can help bring those components together. Feel free to ask questions if you have. Oh, here we go. If needed, Stephanie, so Stephanie's asked a question, if needed for external bleeding, how much would you use? I would use a drop directly in the wound, depending on severity. It might be multiple drops, almost salt and pepper shaker style, until I know it's not in severe damage anymore. I might even restart that 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later if I am still en route to the vet and continuing to have problems. So this is one that you kind of use as much as you need to based on its severity. The next one you want to have available to you is peppermint. So think of using it as smelling salts. Your dog, your cat, your horse, your whatever has collapsed, fainted, having some difficulty. This may help bring them back to alertness or at least awareness. We know that peppermint for the humans, some women call it their personal air conditioner. You put it on the back of your neck and it creates this cooling sensation. If we add it to a dog that perhaps is overheating, it can help cool them in the same way. I've made a note on another slide, but I'm going to insert it here. When we add water, or think a cool towel over top of peppermint that we have put onto the dog's body, for example, water intensifies that feeling, right? This is why water is seldom used as a carrier. We often use it as a mister, right, when we spritz around. But just be aware that if you're adding water on top of an oil, you are intensifying its effect. In this case of overheating, heat stroke, I'm probably okay with that, right? But I just want you to be aware that water significantly increases the intensity of an essential oil, okay? We can use this for digestion issues, soothing upset stomach, soothing a stomach that is perhaps uncomfortable in the car. There are dilution ratios. I'm not going to get into them a lot here. I reference them to remind me to bring this up. Dilution is going to be based on the animal. So whether it's a dog, a cat, a horse, a bird, those kinds of things, the dilution ratios matter. I can help you with any of them based on what you are trying to work with and the size of your animal, for example. And one thing that I want to clarify too is I think I thought this, that when you're applying an oil to an area of your body, for example, and we talk about adding a carrier oil to it, that's the dilution. You mix a drop and a carrier oil and you diluted it, but that's not dilution at all. That's creating, you're still putting a full drop of oil when you do that, right? It's still a full drop of oil to the body. You've just added a carrier that makes it cover more area and be slower to penetrate. If we're talking about true dilution, like down to 1/10 of 1%, you have to mix it in a different bottle, right? So you might add, if we're looking at 1%, we would add 1 drop of oil and 100 drops of the carrier oil into a bottle, shake that up, and then use drops from that new bottle. That's a diluted oil. And so it becomes really important to start to understand that when you're thinking about dilution, and that becomes an important factor in this long-term care kind of thing that we're going to talk about in a future topic, okay? Orthopedic injuries can be supported with peppermint. Stiff muscles can be supported here. So if you've had a dog that perhaps has been some sort of body slam of some kind and they're stiff and the muscles are achy, then peppermint is an oil that you can use to provide some comfort to that as well. Making sense so far? Anybody confused? We'll stop, for example, see what questions anybody might have. Okay. So we're going to move on into a few other oils. So again, those 4 we talked about were if you had access to nothing else or could only afford 4 oils, those are the 4 to keep on hand. Okay? Other places that you can add oils, and we'll talk about some of these as being part of the starter kit as well. So lemon... Lemon is one that you can use if you're in an emergency and you need to get your hands clean so you can go to work. Drop it on there, rub them together, and get to work on your animal. It will also help deter insects from, let's say you have a dog or a horse or a cow and they live outside. Now, I know many of you don't do that for your dogs, but there are some dogs that we work with that they live yard lives, right? We want to keep their injuries from having all these flies and gnats and whatnot bother around it, right? So lemon can be an oil that helps that. It also helps warm the channels of the body. So we talk about those meridians. So I am by no means an expert in Chinese medicine. I am learning. And I'm also learning about energy in Reiki and yoga and lots of other things. But that's what we're talking about, and it can help improve circulation. It can also be one that helps with a PTSD association of what is happening to them, right? So they've been seriously wounded, and that's going to leave an imprint. We know that lemon is uplifting and bright, and so it can be one that helps address the trauma of the experience. Frankincense, honestly, y'all, I think that should be added to the, if you can afford nothing else, frankincense is the one. I use it. I love it. I actually have sacred frankincense, which I love it. For some reason that one is kind of like my oil. But frankincense will help with wound care. It brings oxygen to the brain. So if your dog or your pet has had head trauma, you want to basically sprinkle frankincense everywhere. Bringing oxygen to the brain. Don't do it just once, do it often. Do it on the way to the vet. It is one that if you are sending your dog into surgery, for example, and I keep using dogs because that's what I know, what I love. Cats and other animals are coming along. But if they're going to have a surgical experience, this is one that you can provide an anointment with. We know frankincense is a holy anointing oil. Use it for your animals, okay? When we think about this support for stress and despair, it is as much for you as it is for the dog, right? Because again, these are traumatic episodes, and I sit here and I think about it and I start getting cold chills. We want you to keep your hope and your options and know that there is possibility of bringing things back to wellness, and this oil is beneficial to you in this experience also, okay? Geranium, let me flip pages here because I have a note. This is one that also has some PTSD type support, meaning it will help the animal let go of negative memories, negative associations, negative experiences that are associated with these things. It's a very gentle oil. So if I think about lemon, all those citrus oils can kind of be, you know what happens when you get a lemon on a paper cut, right? That's kind of how they can feel. Geranium is gentler than that, and is one that would be very beneficial in the cat space as well, okay? It can help with injuries that are scarring and help minimize that. I'm not telling you won't have a scar, but it certainly can help with the rebuilding of those skin tissues. Ravitsara is for respiratory. Hang on, Stephanie, I'll come back. Can Ravenstar be beneficial for muscle spinal injury after? Yes. Yes. So this is one that helps with nerve support, and it could be added to a long-term regimen, a sort of a chronic supportive care type issue. It can be added to those regimens as well. For this sudden onset of paralysis or spinal injuries and issues that have just happened, you're dropping that, and you're driving to the vet. You got them in the car and you keep dropping it on them, right? Just keep trying to support. And what you're trying to do is keep those systems of the body active and trying to get them to start their own regenerative care, if that makes sense. But yes, you can start to use protocols for long term. And Stephanie, something that might be beneficial there also is the raindrop technique, where some dogs get it every day. I know some dogs that are getting it a couple times a day, but at minimum, most dogs who need a raindrop type program are getting it every week, every 2 weeks, to help bring about improvement to whatever issue we're trying to work on. The raindrop, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, has 7 primary oils in it, and they are intended to sort of engage all of the systems of the body. And then we layer in additional oils to get really targeted at other systems that might need the most support. So raindrop would be something that I would look at for your ongoing care. Okay. Um, Pine, I did not know when I was a child that my grandmother was an aromatherapist. She didn't call herself that, but she swore by pine oil. We got it spritzed and poured and dropped into everything, insect bites, injuries. I still have a scar on my leg from an injury that happened at her store. We had this little family market, and I slid under an ice maker, and she's like, you'll be fine. So, but she believed in the benefits of pine oil liniments. And so I've started really researching a little bit more about that oil to understand its benefits, not realizing that it is really helpful to the respiratory systems, our lungs, our sinuses. Think about a dog whose adrenaline is depleted. They're just like, I can't. This is an oil that may help with that. If we think about congestion in the lymphatic system, this might get things moving again. I found this term anchor the Po really interesting. Again, traditional Chinese medicine. So as soon as I'm finished with this class, I'm going to figure out how I can learn more about Chinese medicine. I had found Chinese medicine very interested when I met a holistic veterinarian at a trainers conference, and we were talking about nutrition. And now it's starting to show up in this line as well. And so I really want to learn more. But if the veterinarian that I'm working with here, she describes this as it will help them have desire to stay, right? If they are fading, we feel like we're losing them, then this can be an oil that kind of creates an incentive or a desire for them to want to continue to fight with us. Balsam fir acts like a steroid. So when I think about people who are telling me, and so that's going to get into the long-term care a little bit, but when I think about people who say, my vet put my dogs on steroids, I'm thinking, what else can we use? Is there an alternative that might help support that? And there are some things that we can do that might be less less difficult on the body and perhaps more supportive to the body than long-term steroid use, for example. So again, this can help in an emergency. Yep, pine oil, absolutely. Okay, so other things that you could benefit by having in your first aid kit. These are blends. These are not single oil. They are blends from the Young Living line. Digize, intended to help with digestion. Think car sickness, diarrhea, vomiting, from things that we know the root cause, right? I mean, if your dog, again, this is not to replace your vet. It's not to diagnose something. But if it's just general tummy upset, maybe from food transition or eating something that they shouldn't have that's not significantly harmful, Digize is the way to go. I'll give you 2 examples with Poppy. A few weeks ago, she got into one of the training dogs' bag of dog food and decided to help herself to as much as she could consume. Her belly was all swole up and she's waddling around. I'm like... So what do, right? You knew this was going to be a problem. So she got Digized throughout the day until that problem had been taken care of. And it helps. It helps a lot. The other day, she was staying with my mother and for whatever reason tossed up her breakfast. Well, I'm like, did she get into something in the backyard she shouldn't have? And the answer was no, she shouldn't have. So she probably found some leftover critter or something out in the yard, and we gave her some Digize and she was a-okay. So again, think those dogs that are transitioning food, car sickness, that kind of stuff. Okay. Immu Power, when you really want to boost a dog's immune system, this is one that you can certainly add to the bag of tricks. And a couple of examples of that are, I have a client that just contacted me recently. They have a very young puppy that was presented 4 days after they got it home with parvo. They were able to save the dog because they went to the vet. Dog spent 6 days in the vet, which is not inexpensive, but the dog survived parvo. And so now what? Most people, and I would have been this person, I'd be like, okay, we're good. And I'd go on about my store-bought kibble or whatever. And now I'm saying, we really need to sort of rebuild that immune system because they probably had none to begin with. We know they didn't get the vaccine. They weren't well cared for, which probably means the mama was not well cared for. So we need to boost up this dog's immune system. And so this is one of the routes we're going down. Same is true for a dog that may be just generally unwell. Something is happening to them and we need to boost up their immune system. So we're going to talk about that deeper next week. And then we're also going to talk about, I've lost my train of thought. I was reading questions too. I'll come back, Stephanie. Hang on. Anyway, immune support is super helpful. And I'll give you another example. A lot of people are asking me, what should I do about the vaccine for the canine flu, right? I will be happy to discuss that with any of you one-on-one. I'm not going to share it publicly because of this compliance thing. But I will tell you that my number one priority for my dogs is that their immune system is as strong as it can be. Okay, so let me see what these questions are saying. How do you determine how much of what, love, to use? Digest? Depends on the size of the dog. So we can get into the dilution ratio again, and I'll discuss that with anybody who wants to. What I often do is just put a drop on a treat or in their food or in their water. Depends on how much I'm trying to get to them quickly. For Poppy, we put 1 drop on a treat and handed it to her. For the weenie dogs, I would probably dilute that. You can also use Digest to rub on the belly itself, right? So it can go internal or topically. And it depends on how long we need to give it to them and for what purpose. Used topically. Most of them are, so Alice, some of them are ingested, right? Some of them are for petting. Some are to be put on the belly or the head or the spine or the wherever. But EmuPower, Digest, they can be ingested as well. There's a Vitality line of products with Young Living that have been approved. You'll see it said that they are GRAS, generally regarded as safe, which is the FDA's approval for ingestion, right? It kind of depends on what issue specifically you're trying to resolve. But I'll give you another example. For those of you following my Facebook page, you saw me post a picture of a dog that was at the conference with his owner. He's an 11-year-old German Shepherd that is extremely unwell. He was given 2 weeks to live about 6 weeks ago. And basically she's throwing the book at him, right? And what would happen is, as we would bring out oils, he would choose many of them as ones that he wanted to lick off our hands. And Cypress was one that every day I pulled it out, he would just drink just droplets of it completely off my hand. He would lick and he would look at me for more. That's not an oil that would generally be given internally, but he wanted it. And so then I know people are going to say, well, my dog wants rat poison too, and my dog ate it twice, right? So we have to look at what we know can be safe for them and not give them things that they shouldn't have. But they will tell us, the dog, the animal will tell us when presented with something like this, how they need it. And so I find that super fascinating as well. And this is why when we talk about those chronic illnesses or those aging, end of life kind of illnesses, the protocols are extremely different than they are for this emergency first aid kind of stuff. I hope that helps. Back to pine. Is there some research that pine? I have not seen pine counterproductive to seizures, but I will look it up. I do have a little note coming up on seizures here in a minute, okay? But I don't recall that as not to use. Okay. Back to this little list. Hope and or joy. These are spiritual, emotional oils. In the state of an emergency, we all need a little hope and we all need a little joy. So if your dog is like seriously injured, this would be one that you would want to start applying to both of you. Purification. Think about the elimination of things that are impure, right? Whether that's on the body, in the body, or in the air, okay? Melrose, why did I not make a note about that one? Hang on. Melrose. It is for wounds that have, trying not to use a specific word, but wounds that really need to get cleaned up, right? They're starting to grow in size, right? This can be a beneficial oil to that. It's beneficial to abscesses, what's called proud flesh in the horse and equine space, and wounds that are draining, right? So they're dripping out all this nastiness. This oil can be beneficial to that, okay? Panaway is one that will also help stop bleeding. There's actually helichrysum in it. So remember, that's one we started with earlier. Helichrysum is in this blend. And so it can help with the bleeding, the bruising. It's one that if your dog is in a dog fight, been bitten, or you've been bitten, it needs to go in. Lots of it, right? And again, on your way to the vet's office. And then it can also be used as aftercare to help with the discomfort associated with those injuries. Peace and calming or stress away kind of help, again, keep us on even keel, help keep the dog less stressed out, help keep everybody calm. And then thieves is the one that would be, again, keeping those things that want to be bothersome in a wound, if that makes sense, those things that want to continue to keep a wound unhealthy, it helps eliminate that. And this is also beneficial for oral care in your dog, and that sort of thing. The ones that you see with a little asterisk by them, they come in the premium starter kit. So again, there's no better way to get started building your kit for first aid or any other problem that you're having than that starter kit. It's, in my opinion, the tip of the iceberg. I'm looking at my collection now that's been growing for just several months, I guess about maybe 8 or 9, 10 months maybe. And it's just exploding. And most of it I don't have to pay for, which basically now is starting to mean I get a lot of it free with my essential rewards points, with the bonuses that happen each month, and now the fact that I'm starting to receive incentives back for people who are joining the team. I can tell you more about that, but that's a whole nother conversation. Okay. Let's see, are there other questions? Okay. Some things you need to note, things you need to be aware of. Tell your vet that you are or have used oils on your pet during the emergency. Some oils are flammable, right? Which means if he brings out a cauterizer to address a wound or an injury, he could start a fire on that part of the skin. We don't want that to happen. It is normal for these oils to be flammable. But just tell them so that they can wash that area really well before they begin their work. Again, our work with the oils is to help create as much stabilization and healing and getting the body to work before and on our way to the vet, right? But be sure to tell them. And I'll give you an example that the vet shared with me. She was bitten in the face by a dog when she was treating him for whatever. I don't even think whatever is relevant, but he broke her nose, ripped part of her cheek open, and she's like, I got to finish this procedure. So they got all of that under control, and it was about 2 hours before she made her way to get her face cared for. And when she got there, the physician asked her, how old is this injury? And she told him a couple of hours. And he said, there's no way. How long have you waited before you got here or before you came in for treatment? And she said, I promise it's only been a couple of hours. His opinion was that it had healed the equivalent of 2 days worth of healing between the time she put, and I think what she was using was the Panaway, the injury blend with the helichrysum in it, right? And she did that, did what she needed to do around her clinic, and then went to care for herself. And he thought it had been 2 days instead of 2 hours. So again, we're just trying to boost the body to do what it's naturally programmed to do until we can get to our vet care, right? Okay. Keep carrier oil in your first aid kit, whether that's like a V6, olive oil, coconut oil, something, and you want liquid, right? So if you're using coconut, it should be fractionated so that you can dilute and create your own little bottles that we talked about, right? And flush out your eyes or the animal's eyes if you accidentally get an oil in the eyes. Remember, adding water makes it worse, makes it more intense. So never wash out your eyes with water. Wash them out with oil. Okay, keep those little bottles on hand. Here's a little example. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see me, but here's a little example. They come in like half dram. So you get a little tiny bottle, you can get a bigger bottle or bigger bottle, and you can make your own little concoctions, adding the carrier oils to it so that you can get the proper dilutions. Oh, if you have been putting an ointment, right, or a lotion or a potion or some homeopathic type of support, and this really is more into the long-term care, but just be aware if there's something topical on your animal's skin and you add an oil to it, you are penetrating that ointment or lotion further into the skin. You're driving it in. So you don't want to do that. So look at a different part of the body. Again, all bets are off if that's where the wound is and it's an emergency, but just be aware that when you're starting to apply things to your body or your dog's body, that you want it to be a clean space, not over top of some other lotions and potions. Never drop oils directly down into the ear. I would use maybe a little cotton swab on the outer side. If you're doing your dog, just open the flap and do it around there, but not down into the ear itself. And keep the oils away from the eyes. They can't, so think those hot oils like thieves and peppermint or clove, if you were using that for some reason, or basil, oregano, those hot oils, you don't ever want them around the eyes. Okay. Let's see. I keep looking for questions. Boop, boop. Okay. Couple of other things, right? Couple of other things we can just sort of revisit. Wounds, helichrysum, your #1 oil. Thieves, Melrose, great options. Bee stings, lemon, purification. Dog feeling bloated like Poppy was. This is not gastric torsion. This is not the twist, right? The twist, you need to be on the way to the vet. You can throw anything at them you want. Digest, peppermint helps, but get them going. Poppy, for example, eating too much food, then we were just fine with the Digest, right? That didn't require rushing off to the vet because I knew what it was. And believe me, I have seen 2 Great Danes torsion. You never want to experience that. They look differently. Neither dog presented with the same symptoms. I just happened to know both dogs well and go, something's wrong here. And I didn't slow down. I called the vet from the car. I was like headed out. So don't waste any time with those things. Broken bones, helichrysum, peppermint, panaway, burns, lavender. If your dog has had a choking experience, frankincense is a good one to follow that with. If we're having problems getting things out, Digest is another good one. Lemon, peppermint help get things moving. Coughing, that's back to our eucalyptus, all those respiratory things. RC and purification, helpful for that, both in the starter kit as well. Cuts, scrapes, bruising, we're back to helichrysum. I'm not going to read all of these. Dehydration, give them lemon in their water. Give them peppermint in their water. What I do so there's 2 schools of thought, right? You don't want to create an issue where the dog won't drink at all, right? So again, think back to that imprinting. That smell needs to be positive, not something that sends them flying away from their bowl. Ideally, get them drinking. But if you have to have a second bowl that's clear, clean water, do it, right? Clear, clean water. What you may find is that they prefer the one with the essential oils in it. So just keep that in mind, that you don't want to create it so much that they won't drink anything at all. Diarrhea, upset stomach, throwing it up, back to lemon, peppermint, and Digest. We talked about getting bit by a dog or your dog getting bit by a dog, frankincense, helichrysum, panaway. Heat stroke, peppermint. Scratching, this is a common one now. So this got to be something that you think about. Is this food related, environmental related, habitual, OCD type behavior? There are a lot of reasons why a dog starts scratching. So this can help if it's skin or immunity based. But I see this all the time, and this is what you guys feel free to join the group that I'll tell you about in a minute. But I see people all the time saying, hey, my dog's got itchy skin and blah, blah, blah. My first question is not what oil are you using, but it's what food are you feeding, right? So we got to get the gut healthy all around to address things that the body is doing. And that is often a symptom of skin issues when the food's not right. So we'll talk more about that another day. If your dog has gotten into some poison, helichrysum is the oil to go to. It does not replace the need to induce vomiting if that's the right thing to do, right? Huey found rat poison not once but twice in his life at houses that were not mine. And yes, I made him puke it all up, but that was on the way to the vet. I did not, these are like fast motion things, right? I'm flying out and things are happening on my way out the door. I had a little dog several years ago step into a yellow jacket's nest, and they were stinging him, and you could tell they were stinging him. And I'm like, I don't even know how to help this little dog, because if I go in there, I'm going to get stung. Thank God his training kicked in. I'm like, his little name was Baxter. I'm like, Baxter, come. And he shot out of there. I literally took my shirt off in the yard to wrap and fling bees around us away. I'm plucking him out with my shirt in my hand, trying to help him. I flew into the house. I slammed Benadryl down his throat, like 4 or 5 of them. He was a tiny little dog, on the way to the vet. And I know that saved that little dog's life. He made it, but by the time I got him to the vet, his gums were gray. And that was the word I'm like, his gums are, because they wanted me to have a seat. I'm like, his gums are gray. That they knew then I knew what I was talking about. It took 2 epi shots to save this little guy, and then an overnight hospital stay and so on. But the reason I bring that up is you guys have to act crazy fast. You have to know where your stuff is, and it's like all in one motion. You are moving, gathering, doing what you need to do as you're driving out of the driveway. So just be aware of that. Know where your stuff is. Know what you're going to use in an emergency. Go take an emergency first aid class. And I have a book. If you sign up, I'm sending you this book. And I have another book I'll tell you about. It's too expensive for me to give to everybody. It's about $50, but it's one everybody needs. If you are using oils, you need it in your hands. Just no exceptions, okay? I got off on a tangent. Seizures, if they are actively having one, peppermint, purification, frankincense are the oils to use during those moments. What I would then do is add to my long-term care raindrop technique, at least on a weekly basis for dogs who are having those, and you've not yet figured out the control. You do this in addition to the things that you're working on with your vet, right? And then you start maybe adjusting the schedule of raindrop to see where the dog needs it and how frequent they need it. Since water intensifies, what would you do to clean it off if you needed to? I would use a carrier oil. I would just get like straight coconut oil, straight olive oil, maybe even witch hazel, but something along those lines to cleanse an area or at least diminish the effect of an oil that's already on the body or some other ointment or lotion that's already on the body. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to stop here and ask if you guys have any questions about anything we've covered, or if you want to talk about some other area, I'm happy to help. If you are not yet on the journey of oils, I am happy to speak with you one-on-one. If you're already using them from somewhere else, great. I just want that to be a vendor that is trustworthy. Do not be buying your oils at the local mega retailer for $4.97. I can promise you, as sure as I'm sitting on this chair, that they are not quality oils. And I would not want you to put them on or in or around your dog, okay? I wouldn't want you to do that to you or your family either. It's also important to know that, generally speaking, what we're doing for the dogs, the same principles apply to us and our families, and vice versa. There are a few oils that we use on us that we wouldn't use on the animal, but that's rare. And it's more, how do I put this? If I can speak for Young Living, there are extremely few that I wouldn't use on an animal from that line. There are fewer of those than there are in some of the other lines that we can't really go back and say, hey, what's in this thing? Because they won't tell us, right? Some companies will not tell us. But happy to chat with any of you one-on-one. If you have questions about your pet, I'm your guy. If you have questions about your babies and your senior citizens, I know people you can talk to. I'll get you going, right? I have a Facebook group that I'd love for you guys to join called the Well-Oiled and Well-Fed Canine. The link is here. And my Facebook page. As soon as I get my Facebook page up to 200 followers, I'm going to start doing giveaways. And it probably won't be every day, but I'm going to start giving away oils like citronella, which is great for our outdoor sprays to keep critters off our dogs, right? I have spare bottles of lavender, citronella, tea tree, lavender. I have some soap. I have some books. I got lots of stuff. I want to grow my group first, okay? And then if you want to chat with me at any time, feel free. In the coming weeks, I'm going to do emotional issues with dogs. That's going to be dogs that have fear, trauma, anxiety. Dogs take on our emotions, and we'll talk about that. We're going to talk about overall wellness, which fortunately is where my dogs are, right? I don't have dogs that have any sort of chronic or debilitating or seriously aging type issues. So we're going to talk about the environment that they live in, how I'm going into a proactive state of getting things detoxed out of their system, and who might need that, right? Where they're coming from. Think these rescue dogs that we don't know what their past is like, especially if there's a possibility that they've been double vaccinated for stuff. So we're going to talk about all of those kinds of things. I'm going to create a small group discussion. I'm not going to do that in a public one, where if your dog has received a diagnosis of whatever, we're going to talk about how to move forward in getting support for that. And then we're going to talk about just dogs that are aging. So I do have a dog that's fallen into this aging category, right? My little senior dachshunds. And we're all going to face the end of life for our dogs at some point. Some of you are closer to that than others, and some of us may not even know how close we are. So I want to give you some discussions on things that will help that, that preparation, that ceremony, if you will. We want to be present when that happens. And if we're there, there are some things that you can do to make that transition of life better for both of you. And I'll share that with you. Another thing that I'm working on is aggression and how we can affect a dog. So it does not forego training. It doesn't forego it at all. But I have been using essential oils with every aggressive case that I have taken on in the board and train program. And I certainly talk about it with clients who are doing private lessons. But there's an opportunity there to help their state of mind. And if it's dog aggression, to help that harmony, that especially dog fighting within the home, to help those relationships. And so we're going to talk about all those things, and we'll keep going. So if there's a topic you want to cover, feel free to let me know what that is, and I'll add it to our list. All right, anybody else have questions? Was this helpful to you? Yes, no, maybe. Would love to hear just a tad of feedback. Okay, Ro, that sounds good. Thank you, Stephanie. Appreciate it. All right, friends, if any of you feel like you need any one-on-one, I'm here. Seriously here, happy to help. Just give me a shout and we'll get to work, okay? Have a great night. Bye-bye.